We could gain so much from trading with India, and yet we refuse to. And the question is why? It's because of this hyper nationalism, hyper patriotism. And the interesting thing is, these hyper patriots and hyper nationalists don't want to pay tax. India now is $1 trillion economy. Pakistan is 250 billion, nothing in comparison. And the difference will be growing with time. Now, nobody is asking Pakistan presently to give up its nukes. What Ishaq Dar was responding to was his own question, essentially. Nobody told him that, look, you got to give up your nukes. I'm seeing so many young people who are hopeless in Pakistan. Society doesn't understand them. Society puts such strong constraints on them. And they want to flee, find a way to get to Europe, to America, to wherever. But please don't take a boat. Pakistan hasn't done very well in many ways, and we're being faced with enormous problems. What we're seeing at the present time is a breakdown of the economy. You see people out in the streets now literally begging for food, and it's going to get worse and worse.
Dr. HOODBHOY, thank you so much for joining us, and good evening. I know you're in Pakistan, I'm in Dallas, Texas. There's a time difference. How is your day going?
Oh, it went very well. Normal, worked.
You're obviously a public intellectual. You're known as a scientist and also as an activist, and your opinions are, are varied on many subjects. How do you see yourself nowadays? Well, what is your mission? How do you see, when you look in the mirror and define yourself, how do you see yourself?
I see myself as a normal human being who has a normal intelligence and endowed with the rational faculties that all humans have. I see myself as a citizen of Pakistan, a very worried one. I see myself as a scientist, one who has spent much of his life researching and learning and wants to learn a great deal more, but is unfortunately now out of time because my energies are engaged in so many different directions. But still, I do try to keep up with what's happening in my field and in associated fields.
Well, Dr. HOODBHOY, I know you may feel that, but from an outside perspective, everybody who sees you doesn't see that. They see you highly energetic and going about your business as amazingly as you did in your younger days. So just to let you know from an outside perspective. But I was going to ask you something. Technology, obviously, and 21st century has been amazing technologically. I really want to understand, what is the technology that kind of excites you, that you see, in the future coming to kind of help the global South and developing countries?
Well, the technologies will keep coming. Who could have foreseen that cell phones would be so ubiquitous that even your driver and cook would have one? However, what I'm really excited about are the space telescopes, the James Webb telescope, which now allows us to look so far into space and so deep into the universe's origins that it's just absolutely mind-boggling. Who would have thought that we would have detected galaxies that formed just a few 100 million years after the Big Bang? But that's what we are finding now. The technology of that telescope is fantastic. But then, when I look at all the other technologies that are coming up in every different field these days, all the talk is about Chat GPT. Mm-hmm. That's one of the things. But technologies will keep coming. It's another matter that what you want, that is, for those technologies to impact us in the South or well, more specifically Pakistan. Where are those technologies? Well, the technologies are around. It's a matter of finding the will to use them, adapt them, and turn them to our advantage. That depends entirely upon how well a society is equipped intellectually and what its goals are. That technology will not be able to give you, and no amount of doing science will help you on that. That's something that each society has to find for itself.
Am I to take it that one of the concerns would be, from your perspective, that like any other technology, even the newer technology would be just harnessed for the use of the elite mostly, and would not make it way, even though cell phone has, but at the same time, when you look at AI, when you look at robots or anything that's coming in the next 10 to 20 years, is it one of your concerns that just like anything else, it won't trickle down? Technology won't be more democratized? Is that what I'm hearing? Or can you elaborate on that?
Okay, well, look, then you have to have a framework in which to look at it all. So, Pakistan hasn't done very well in many ways, and we're being faced with enormous problems. What we're seeing at the present time is a breakdown of the economy. You see people out in the streets now literally begging for food, and it's going to get worse and worse. Now, this didn't have to happen. It happened because of extreme mismanagement. It happened because of wrong national goals. It happened because greedy people arrogated all the resources to themselves, and the result is that essentially the rupee is collapsing. Things are becoming very expensive to import. The fuel prices have gone up the ceiling and so forth. So this doesn't really have to do with technology. It has to do with management. It has to do with national goals. It has to do with one's broader vision of society. Now, technology can certainly help you, and it has helped us. Look, if it wasn't for Green Revolution technology, there is no way that Pakistan's present population could have been sustained. Consider the fact that Pakistan, when it came into being in 1947, was how many people? 28 million. And now, how many is it? 240 million people. So where there was one person, there are now 8 people. Where did that food come from? It came from exploiting biotechnology. The whole Green Revolution was about that. So you can't say that technology hasn't made a difference. I mean, our entire lives in the world, everywhere, including Pakistan, is now fashioned by technology. However, if you use that technology stupidly, then you get into a lot of trouble. Let me give you an example here in Pakistan. Okay, now the technology for building roads is, it's there in the form of big machines. So we build roads and highways, and we've built so many of them and built so many houses, and there are colossal housing societies coming up in every city that are swallowing up agricultural land. And if this rate continues, then we're not going to have much land on which to grow food. That's an example. But look, it's not just Pakistan's problem. What we humans have done to this planet as a whole is pretty terrible. And now we're getting the blowback in the form of climate change. But anyway, let me ask, you ask me, what is it that technology can do? It can do a lot, but it can also lead you in wrong ways.
So I just recently read an article regarding Karachi would be I mean, they always say underwater, obviously it'll lose a lot of land. I assume it'll just keep going back by 2060 if if everything goes unchecked, climate change wise. Which is a very real possibility. We have the same issues in Miami. I mean, water coming in or rising rather. Um, I don't know what Pakistan can specifically do, or even the global South in general, developing countries can do, because their perspective is, and I wanted to get your view on this. Hey, you guys had your turn. You did all this pollution, and you guys still do a lot more pollution, developed countries, and now you're telling us to kind of, be more responsible. What is your view on that?
It's absolutely true that Pakistan's contribution to global greenhouse gases is pretty small, something like 1%. And it's true that the harm was done elsewhere. However, that doesn't mean that the world is going to compensate us for this mad growth in population. Look, Pakistan's population is going to be 360 million in 25 years from now. And climate change is going to be just an additional factor in devastating the quality of life here in Pakistan. So isn't it up to us to control our birth rate? It's not the world's problem, it's our problem. And yet absolutely nothing is being done about that. This is an unmentionable problem in today's Pakistan. In fact, you might know that they dissolved the Ministry of Population Planning some 15 years ago. And there's no replacement for that. Here's a country where you should be making available contraceptives everywhere, every neighborhood store. You should be encouraging young women to not produce children. But that's not happening. And so we are digging our own grave. Yeah, sure, there's a climate change. It's going to make things even more terrible. But even if there had not been climate change, we would be still in a thick soup.
So we have a double whammy sort of situation going on. Obviously, we have, well, I mean, to put it lightly, I guess. I remember Dr. Hoodbhoy, was it the 80s, I believe, under Junaid Jorzia, there was like Do Bache Hi Achhe campaign. I remember that. I don't think it ever worked, but I think they tried to do some stuff in the 80s. Am I remembering correctly? There used to be ads in Pakistan.
I can't remember exactly when the Ministry of Population Planning was dissolved, but it was around that time. I think either during Zia's time or shortly thereafter, because the mullahs put up such a stink. They said, we need to have more children. We need to spread Islam. We need to do jihad.
Right.
And that's...
So again, that's the whole Talibanization or whatever you want to call it of the society kind of pushed back that agenda as well. It was one of the another agenda that it affected, basically, another mission of the government, what it is.
Correct.
What about nuclear energy? Obviously, the electricity issue is huge in Pakistan. When I was growing up there in Karachi, load shedding was the norm. It still is. It may be even worse. Dr. Hoodbhoy, what do you think about nuclear energy? Oliver Stone recently made a documentary about how not to fear nuclear energy as a source of, to provide more power to societies. What is your take on that?
Well, I'm sort of conflicted on that. Yes, I am a nuclear physicist, and I guess nuclear physics made possible nuclear energy. But it seems to me that nuclear energy is not the right way to go. At least I should say, nuclear energy from fission is not the right way to go. Nuclear energy from fusion would be absolutely the right way. But that's still 30 years away. Let me tell you what's wrong with fission. Fission means that heavy nuclei break up, and in the process, they release energy. But they also create a lot of crap, a lot of radioactive materials that are exceedingly dangerous for a very long time. And a nuclear reactor has typically something like 1,000 tons of radioactive material. It is far more radioactive than an atomic bomb. An atomic bomb would typically contain a few kilograms, maybe 30, 20 kilograms of radioactive material. This contains tons of them. And so when these are located near population centers, then all kind of hells can break loose. We saw this in Chernobyl, we saw this in Fukushima, and of course nothing much happened in 3 Mile Island in the United States, but these two last disasters were so terrible that it'll take another 40 years to control what happened in these two disasters. One happened in 1984, I guess, or 86, and the other one happened in 2011. It'll take another 40 years from today to contain those disasters.
So solar, what is your take on solar energy then? I know Elon Musk of Tesla talks a lot about that they can actually generate a lot of power if you put actual infrastructure in place. What's your take on that?
Oh, I love solar energy. My house runs on solar energy. Here on the rooftop, I don't have a really big solar panel, but it's enough to power this house for the entire day. Yeah, sure, when summer comes along and an air conditioner is needed, well, then I can only run it during the day on the solar panels. But look, this is the way to go. And here in Pakistan, I see so little use of solar panels. It's changing a bit now. If I look in my mohalla over here, there was nobody except me who was using solar panel 10 years ago. But now I see that every fifth house has solar panels, and hopefully it'll grow and grow. And it's going to grow because electricity is now so expensive in Pakistan that you can get skinned paying for it. And this solar electricity is for free. These solar panels will make up their value, their cost in, mine has already made up for it, but in 5 years,
Right.
they pay for themselves, maybe less now.
Dr. HOODBHOY, you might have even noticed on your visits to maybe the US or Canada, here they had a huge campaign, especially under Obama, when President Obama came, to give all sorts of credit and tax exemptions if you go solar. And they funded a lot of solar. It hasn't even taken off here. It's weird. But one of the reasons people say is because electricity is so stable here that you don't have load shedding and things like that. So people are not really inclined. I would think if it wasn't cost prohibitive in Pakistan, a lot of people would, or even in other developing countries, people would move towards that, right? I mean, if there was a campaign telling people, look, if you do this, you will have electricity and we won't have as much burden on the the grids. But there is no campaign for that in Pakistan as of yet, right? Am I correct?
There is no campaign, but it's growing. It's not growing as fast as it would if there was a campaign. The other thing is that, everything is going to go up in price, including the cost of these solar panels, because the rupee is crashing. And that, I think, is going to be really bad for the solar industry over here.
Okay, because it's already probably quite expensive, and then because I assume a lot of things obviously come from out of the country; they're imported.
China. Yeah.
Well, yes. How can I forget? I'm sure everything I'm wearing is from China too, Dr. HOODBHOY. That's just the truth everywhere, isn't it? A long time ago, this is just a silly story, but a long time ago, when I moved to the States, I remember in '89, I went to a store and I saw something made in Pakistan, a shirt. And it made me so happy. I was like, wow. And I bought it. And I haven't seen that probably since '89. I'm not saying there isn't, but China is everywhere. Pakistan obviously was probably doing a lot more back then. I don't know how much it does in clothing, but anyhow, that's beside the point. Dr. HOODBHOY, tell me something. Obviously, for everything you do, your activism, your engagement with the public, to educate them, and to just engage with them, debate with them, and open discussions and things like that. You must have a lot of hope, right? You have. I think a lot of people want to hear from you that you are hopeful, and they would like to know why, so they can take from that hope too, and they can share that hope.
Well, look, does it really matter? Sure, if you have absolutely no hope, then you might as well just go and sit in a corner and wait for the sky to fall. I feel that that's not the way that I would like to go. But on the larger question of whether we should have hope or not, I think an individual has to train herself or himself to avoid that question. Because in the long run, we're all dead anyway. And so let's prepare ourselves for the eventuality that we won't be around. But let's also recall that we are in debt to society, to those around us, to the broader nation, to the broader stream of humanity, because without that, we wouldn't have existed. And so we are under debt to pay back. Now, whether it works out or not for Pakistan, look, I have my periods when I feel really down. On other days, I feel better. When I see something good, when I see something nice that's happened, I say, there's a glimmer of hope over here. But that doesn't matter. You got to do what you got to do.
Dr. HOODBHOY, I mean, I understand your perspective on that. But what about all the young people? I mean, millions and millions of young people under 15 in Pakistan, and most of the population that's under 30 in Pakistan. That's what the stats show. Especially when it comes to education. Obviously, I understand that a lot of money is not spent on it. But do you see that? Could there be a program put in place for at least literacy to go up, or any sort of skill labor to go up? Or are we looking at a situation where, due to other problems, that is such a side debate at this point that it's not even discussed in the House of Power, or whatever you want to call it?
No. This is absolutely what must be discussed. Literacy, I don't care much about, but skills I do. There is such a dearth of skills in Pakistan. Good plumbers, good electricians, good bricklayers, good painters, good carpenters. They need to be trained. And if they are good in whatever they do, they will find a job. They either here in Pakistan or in the Middle East or elsewhere. After all, this is a big world. And so if we can give them skills, there's nothing better than that. I'm not so hot on giving degrees. I don't think that has really helped. What we are seeing is a vast outpouring of young people with degrees in hand. Bachelors, masters, MPhils, PhDs, MBBSs, whatever. And they don't know their subject, which means that they become unemployable, which means also that they become very angry because they say that we have been wronged. They haven't been wronged, actually, because they don't know anything. They don't deserve to be employed. So now the question is, why did we give them degrees when they didn't deserve those degrees, when they learned absolutely nothing during their stints in school, college, university? That fault is society's. And by the way, I must say, since you talk about hope and depression between us, I'm seeing so many young people who are hopeless in Pakistan. And they come to me and they say, they confide personal problems, which is one thing. And those come out of repression. Those come because society doesn't understand them. Society puts such strong constraints on them. And they want to flee. And I say, okay, good. Find a way to get to Europe, to America, to wherever, but please don't take a boat. Some are so desperate, they'll say, but all we need is a little money to get to an agent. The agent will get us to Turkey, to Iran, to Turkey, to Algeria, to Tunisia, and then we'll take the boat from there to Italy, to Spain, wherever. I say, avoid them like the plague. See what's going on. But look, I'm telling you this because there is such a lot of depression around. There's unemployment, there's no jobs. And there can't be jobs because industry virtually doesn't exist. It's whatever did exist, it's shutting down because of the crisis. Imports are stopped. Karachi port is now flooded with containers that can't be opened because the shipping companies say that we want dollars to pay for the freight. Things are bad.
How is that even, well, let's not even get to how that demand is even reasonable. I mean, given the condition of the country, obviously, and the government cannot act and do anything about that, I assume, or doesn't want to.
Well, the government has run out of options. And look, I'm not blaming one government or the other. Every government in Pakistan is to be blamed for our present predicament because we've had wrong national priorities from day one. What were those priorities? Number one, to fight wars against India. Number two, to preserve the economic status quo. Let the rich be rich and the poor be poor. We never had land reform in Pakistan, unlike India. And so all the big land estates remained intact after partition. And so today we have those in place. Of course, they become smaller because over time properties get divided. But our parliament is full of landlords, of those with feudal mindsets. And how do the feudal mindsets come? Because they are progenies of those who inherited those vast tracts of land. And then there's the army, which feels that it must continue to rule Pakistan. And so the state is entirely to blame. Not one specific government, not Imran Khan, not Nawaz Sharif, not Shahbaz Sharif, not Musharraf, whatever. It's that whole system which has proved to be, which has failed the people of Pakistan.
Recently, Dr. HOODBHOY, I appreciate your time. I promise you I'll let you go in half hour. I know you have a lot to do. So I want to ask you sort of your comment on the nuclear nuclear capacity that we have. I thought, my understanding was, from what I've read, and that the idea was deterrence, right? The idea was if we had nukes, we could deter attacks, but our monies have continued to be spent on the same defense, which the deterrence never really was, established by just having nukes. Recently, I forget where Mr. Dar was, the finance minister, when he was asked that if Pakistan would be willing to give up his their long-range missile programs in order to get some money from abroad, and he gave this very grandstanding speech. Just can you comment on what the state of our nuclear capacity is, and where is it taking us? It takes a lot of money to maintain that, and they keep spending money on that. Is that even feasible at this point? If it
Well,
ever
look, in terms of nuclear capacity, we probably have a few more bombs than India has. So maybe in the range of 180 compared to 160. That's what one learns from the open literature. In terms of our ability to destroy each other, yes, it's very much there. Why does it take so much money? Well, because all the time there's the need to upgrade your delivery mechanisms. So India is, of course, way, way ahead in terms of delivery capacity. It has missiles that can go to the other end of the world. That's overkill for Pakistan. But they also have nuclear submarines. They have now 2 aircraft carriers, etc. And now Pakistan is trying to compete with India in terms of delivery capacity. And it's a losing battle because India now is $1 trillion economy. Pakistan is 250 billion, nothing in comparison. And the difference will be growing with time. Now, nobody is asking Pakistan presently to give up its nukes. What Ishaq Dar was responding to was his own question, essentially. Nobody told him that, look, you got to give up your nukes. Not yet, anyway. Well, if Pakistan starts to fall to bits, then of course the question will come up everywhere. Hey, who's got the nukes? Where are they? And who's going to be controlling them in a state of anarchy? Today, what we are seeing is a step towards anarchy. We're not quite there. But if things should degenerate, then of course everybody is going to be worried about this. It will be the rest of the world, it'll be India, but it'll be even us here in Pakistan, because we don't want an individual brigadier or a lieutenant general to be in possession of something that can take out a couple of cities and in return have our cities eliminated. And so the thing is getting bad.
MAD, actually, you said mutually assured destruction. If they're right, MAD. Remember the MAD acronym, mutually assured destruction. That's what they used to call it. Here's the deal. So Sagdar was actually answering his own rhetorical question. Unfortunately, I didn't catch that. He was just like, so nobody asked us, and then he was basically, it was clear grandstanding, it seems.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Because the IMF representative in Pakistan flatly refuted that. She said, we never raised the issue of nuclear weapons. Why are you insisting upon it? You've asked us for a loan, and we're saying that you should spend it on. You should fix your the way in which you collect bills. You should stop this circular debt, or at least control it somewhat. The usual IMF conditionalities. They didn't ask Pakistan for a loan in exchange for nukes. No.
As always, the news kind of, and of course, it's my mistake that I was watching the Pakistani news. It kind of just flashed that point of Sagdar saying that. What, just in connection to this, Dr. HOODBHOY, what is the morality? What is the moral problem with a country having millions of people starving and owning and continuing to service nuclear weapons?
What has happened is fear has been instilled within our people that there is a hungry wolf at the border waiting to eat you up. And this was propagated through our school books. It was mandatory that kids, and I actually, in my library over here, I have manuals from that time, from the 90s, 95, 2000, etc., where they explicitly say that kids, Pakistani kids, must learn about India's evil designs, its 3 wars against Pakistan, and they must learn to make speeches on jihad and shahadat and so forth. So we've grown up conditioned to believe that India is waiting to eat us up. And that's not true. That's not true.
We can trade with India and still have a deterrence. US and China deal with each other all the time. They don't have the best relationship most of the time. How come we are not capable of that? How can Pakistan can do both? You can, in the English, there's an expression, you can walk and chew gum. So why can't we trade at the same time we have our borders and we have our whatever positions we want to take? Is that something we're not capable of as Pakistanis?
You're very correct about the US and China, but even more relevant is China and India. They have a huge trade with each other, something of the order of 80 or 90 billion dollars, whereas Pakistan-China trade is of the order of, I think, 7 to 10 billion dollars, which is peanuts. Pakistan-India trade is essentially zero. Whatever happens via Dubai. We could gain so much from trading with India, and yet we refuse to. And the question is why? It's because of this hyper nationalism, hyper patriotism. And the interesting thing is, these hyper patriots and hyper nationalists don't want to pay tax. They just want to suck the blood of Pakistanis. But their patriotism is then expressed as saying, we hate India, we will never trade with India, etc. They steal from the people, they deposit those monies in Swiss banks, and they don't feel ashamed of it because they say, hey, but we are patriots, aren't we? We hate India. Now that to me is so hollow, so shameful, and yet that's the way we've been conditioned.
Well, I hate to end at this point, Dr. HOODBHOY, but I know I don't want to take more of your time. I really appreciate your time today, sir. And I hope to talk with you again someday. Appreciate your views on everything we asked, and have a wonderful evening, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.